Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
It's not possible to completely prevent yourself from saying something you don't want to say, from putting your kids in a situation that they might feel like kind of traumatized from at some point in their life, because we're not perfect people.
Hey friend, you're listening to the AllMomDoes podcast, part of the Purposely Podcast Network, and I am your host, Julie Lyles Carr. I am getting to talk today to a fellow mama of a whole bunch of kiddos. If you've been a listener for a while, you know that I have 8 kiddos, and my guest today has 9, so she's got me beat. But we're going to have a fantastic conversation and unpack what it means, how to really figure out how we need to be talking to our kids. I want to welcome Amy Hughes to the podcast. Amy, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Julie.
Oh, it's great to have you. So I've already let the listener in on your family dynamic of 9 kiddos, but tell us what the age ranges are for the kids, where you're living in the Central California coastal area, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, okay, so I have my oldest just turned 30, and my youngest is 2. And then we have every age in between.
Yeah.
We have twins in there somewhere, so we got 2 at once. But
yeah, we did that drill too.
Yeah.
Sounds very familiar. I get that. That's
we
amazing.
Yeah, and so we live on the coast of California, the Central Coast, and we just have a big old family. Except we only have 6 kids at home now, so that's small.
Yeah. Contrast and perspective is everything. We're down to about 3 or 4 still in the house. And I have to say, it feels like a whole lot less than when we were at our max. So
Exactly.
I get it. Well, Amy, you have a new book that's come out that I really appreciate the topic on. The title is Words Like Honey. And you delve into this place that honestly, I have to say, in this season of mothering like no other, I'm seeing more and more conversation about how we are supposed to be interacting and talking to our children. And it's even more nuanced than just how should we be disciplining kids, which is kind of a broad category, but really narrowing down how we're talking to our kids. Tell me how you decided that this was something that you wanted to dig into more deeply, what it was that you saw where you thought, wow, this is something that my level of experience as a mom could really potentially help equip others in a way that's unique.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I oftentimes just write the things I need to hear myself.
Same.
Yeah. So, I was writing a different book, and this was actually a chapter in that book. And everything I was writing was just really speaking to me. And it just kept going and going. And I was like, this needs to be its own book. And so I pivoted and started writing this book. And everything that I wrote was just a reminder to myself. And, I kind of have that feeling like if it's something that I really need to hear, then I'm sure there are other people who could use the reminder as well.
Absolutely. I remember when I had my first, and I was doing a lot of reading about children who might have a strong will, or children who were this, or children who were that. And there was a lot of language out there about the need to really hone and craft a kid's character. And I wouldn't say that the advice was to be as tough as maybe that those of us who are Gen Xers were raised in, but there was still very much a sense that you gotta make them tough. You gotta kind of break them and rebuild them. And for myself, because one of my degrees is in psychology with an emphasis in child psych, I always felt like, I don't know. And I'm sure that there were parents as I was raising my oldest who thought maybe I was more permissive than they were. And then we roll forward to when I had my younger children. I don't know about you, Amy. I am curious to hear about this. We talk about our older kids as our olders and the youngers as the youngers. And I have to say, it has been like parenting. It literally is parenting completely different generations for sure. And with your age spread, even more so. Yeah. But I found too that with my younger kids, there were people who felt like maybe I was a little more quote unquote strict, which was so funny because I felt like I had been the one that everybody was going, don't you need to tighten this up with the older ones and with the younger ones, like, I don't know. So for you, you and I are both seeing now trends toward things called gentle parenting, where we're giving validation to a child's emotions. There's some beauty in that. There
Mhm.
are some potential potholes in that. So talk to me about this current version of parenting, how a lot of parents are being encouraged to work with their kids and the strengths you see in some of that, and then some of the possible pitfalls you see in that.
Yeah, so I I do think that, there's a lot of there's a lot of beautiful stuff happening in parenting as people are realizing, maybe this super authoritarian way I was raised is not the way that I want to go with my kids. And of course, there's always the potential of swaying too far to the other side. It's important to keep balance. Um, but I think that one of the things that is happening more and more, and that could help to keep that balance, is really the understanding that we now have of child development and neuroscience, and really understanding what is appropriate for a child, how a child understands things, what age they are really capable of certain ideas and certain behaviors. And if we could keep those things at the focus of our parenting, then it could kind of, I think, prevent us from swaying too far one side, um,
Or the
too far
other.
the
Yeah.
other side. Yeah.
Exactly. How conscious do you think we are about our language choices? Because I can definitely see at times in my own parenting journey that I was more concerned to some degree on behavioral outcomes,
Mhm.
making sure somebody wasn't going to completely obliterate my reputation in a, say the local Target.
Right.
At other times, realizing, particularly with some of my kids' personalities, just how impactful my word choices were. So, where are we at in that flow?
Yeah, I think that we all pretty much realize there are certain things you just shouldn't say and certain ways you just shouldn't talk. Um, but, in the purpose of my book is to really shed light on the things that we don't realize um, are possibly not the best things to say and could potentially be harmful, if we look at child development and all those things. So um, I think that overall, most parents are, they want to speak they want to speak life. They want to say the right things, and overall they do, and they try to. But then we have these little things that, are the things that were said to us, and the things every parent says, and the things we hear on the playground, and they just come out of us because they're just these little phrases and these little words um, that come out so naturally. And
Right.
those are the things that, I want to look at, and I want to say, you know what? Um, you're not trying to harm your child at all. You're a good mama. Um, but let's just kind of consider how the child is viewing these little things that you're saying, and what they're taking in.
Tell me what some of the most damaging phrases that you've uncovered, that you've thought about, some of the most damaging phrases that we use. And again, hey, listener, this is not to make a mama feel guilty in any way,
No.
shape, or form. There are just things that we repeat. There are things
Yeah.
that we are told are the way to handle something, and we
Hmm.
do. So, this is all of us here, right, Amy? Let's all raise our hands that
Hmm.
we have all made mistakes. We've all said
Yeah.
things that you think, I can't believe that came out of my mouth, or I hear something that my parents said to me that I said I would never
Hmm.
say to my kids, and
Right.
that I'm saying that. So this is not about piling on guilt. This is
No.
about awareness and substituting out, making some better choices when it comes to
Yeah.
the way we're talking to our kids. So what are some of those damaging phrases that you want to highlight that a parent may have no idea is causing the kind of chaos within their kid's own heart when they say it?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that yes, absolutely. I repeatedly, repeatedly say, I say these things. I, these are things that I say, and I'm trying to cut out of my vocabulary too. So none of us are perfect. And that is absolutely right. And so some of these things are like, don't be sad. We say don't be sad because we want to comfort our kids. We want them, don't be sad or don't cry. We want them to know that it's okay. It's a source of comfort. But a child doesn't quite get that is not a command, that this thing is bad, that sadness is, they feel sadness as shaming when we're telling them repeatedly not to be sad. They feel like crying is not an okay thing when we're telling them not to cry. And so we're sitting there trying to comfort them. But what they're hearing the message is that I shouldn't feel sad. I shouldn't let my emotions out through crying. And that, when, when they're repeatedly taking that message in over time, that can really cause, some issues with their emotions and the way that they let things out. And as we know, a lot of times when we stifle the sad feelings, or we stifle, crying, and we stifle those things, it can come out later on. We start to bring it out as anger. And so, when we're telling our kids not to be sad, we're actually reducing their ability to show their emotions in a healthy way. Another one is hurry up. Where we always tell our kids to hurry up,
Guilty,
we got to get
guilty,
going.
guilty.
Me too. But a young child is not quite like they just hear that command and they start to feel rushed. They start to feel anxious. It's there's actually something called hurried child syndrome, and it's the buildup of anxiety from feeling rushed into something, from feeling rushed into different activities or different things in their day. And a child, literally, especially a young child, will hear this 10 times a day.
Right.
So if we could really minimize the number, how we say hurry up, how we say these different things, and we're helping to build a more healthy foundation for them.
What do we use instead? Because obviously there are times in which part of our role is teaching our kids how to manage their emotions, not to
Yeah,
avoid. And I think for a lot of us, we're not trying to get them to avoid, but sometimes, the train is moving.
mm-hmm.
We gotta,
Yeah,
okay, yes, you're crying. I know you're sad. I acknowledge that. I see that.
yeah,
And we gotta get to the next thing. Or on the hurry thing,
yeah,
there is a certain level that we are trying to equip kids to be able to contribute to society, and things like
yeah.
learning early. You got to show up when you said you were going to show up is an
Right.
important skill set. So, how do we balance that? What are the phrases we should be using instead in those two instances that you mentioned, when a child is in tears and you
Mm-hmm.
want to comfort them, and when a child is taking it really slow, getting
Mm-hmm.
out to the family van? What do we use
Yeah,
instead?
we all have a family van, don't we?
Oh, yes, we do.
um, yeah. So don't be sad. And instead of don't be sad, you just hug your kid. Say, "Oh, I understand. I know this is hard. I'm here for you. Talk to me." Let it just a matter of presence, as opposed to a command. Just connect, be their rock. When they're sad, let them know, this is okay. It's okay that you're crying. It's okay that how you're feeling. Um, and, I'm here. Just give them that comfort. We like to, with my little kids, we have, what we call a time in spot where we can just go and snuggle and read books and kind of work through that. And if there's anything um, in the situation that requires like talking about, because you never know why they're crying. Maybe it's just something they're sad about, but maybe there's some sort of issue going on. Then once you get through that, you can talk to them and work through whatever you need to. But in the moment, a child doesn't typically have the ability to just flip a switch and feel better. So you kind of just be with them, be present through their emotion, and then when they feel better, talk about it with them. Let them know you're there. Let them know, anything they may need to know about that situation. Um, for hurry up, it's just uh, a different way of encouraging them to be
Yeah.
faster. So I like to, like, let's say we're at the park and we need to leave, and so instead of hurry up, let's go, we could say something like, oh my goodness, let's race to the car and see if we can get home before dad. He's bringing home ice cream for dinner. It's going to be delicious, or for dinner, for dessert, something like
Yeah.
that. You just remove that phrase and replace it with something that really the child can connect to and the child can see as, oh, okay, it's time to go. And this is a good thing, as opposed to, this is awful. I have to, I'm feeling rushed, which when we rush our kids, actually, they kind of freeze and it kind of works against us.
Yeah.
And makes them take longer. But if we can get them, if we can build buy-in in them, like, this is a great thing, you're going to enjoy this. We need to clean the house. Let's have a race and see who can clean the fastest. Different things like that, and just situationally. I think it's really helpful to inspire your kids to keep going without
Right.
having to use phrases um, that are, maybe a little harmful for them.
You think that you are in the final round of getting all this parenting done. You've got kids who are in high school, you're starting to think about college, and you're thinking, this is it. I'm Julie Lyles Carr. I'm a podcaster and I'm a mom of 8. And here's what I want you to know about George Fox University. It's a different way of doing college. Why? Because yes, it's all about getting a fantastic degree to set your kid up for their future. They have 60 undergrad programs available at George Fox University. But that's not where the story ends. It's also about equipping them spiritually. If you get out of college with a degree, but you don't have a closer relationship with God, that obviously is going to deeply impact what your young adult life looks like. So for your kiddos, I want you to consider, what would it mean for your child to be able to go to George Fox University, where 93% of George Fox students say they now have a closer relationship with Jesus? George Fox University is located in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. They have 23 Division III athletic programs, and 100% of students at George Fox University receive financial aid. George Fox University is dedicated to their promise. They want every student to be known for who God created them to be. So listen, parents, yeah, you are getting into some of those final laps, but you definitely want to make these last laps count in a big way when it comes to the legacy of your parenting. So be sure and check out for your student, georgefox.edu. That's georgefox.edu. I think you've tapped into as well. Sometimes there are phrases, there are words that, given the variety of personalities our kids have, can have different effects on them
Mm-hmm.
in ways that are very interesting. So I've got a couple at my house that when you say hurry, they immediately are going to put feet in concrete.
Mm-hmm.
they,
Yeah.
they like to be invited into an initiative, but if you say hurry, they're going to slow down. And it's unconscious. I mean, it's part of what makes their personalities amazing. It's part of what makes them very strong, and they're able to
Mm-hmm.
stand against different kinds of pressures and all kinds of things. But declaratives like that at times don't get the effect that I want. I have other
Right.
kids that absolutely, when they were younger, would freeze in terms of phrases like that. And even things like saying, don't be sad. To your point, I mean, if I have someone in my life, or if I'm upset at the adult level, and I am looking for someone to understand. If someone says to me, now sometimes I think we get to that age, right, where that phrase, don't cry, we can see it as a motherly, we
Mm-hmm.
understand it more now than we probably
Yeah.
did as a child. But it's that friend who just lets you cry it out
Yeah.
and just says, I get it. Those are the places I think that we often feel the most safe, the most seen, the most heard. You do a lot of parenting coaching.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing today in terms of a trend amongst parents? Issues that parents are bringing to you, challenges that they're having? Are there some things that are common that seem to be bubbling up to the surface?
Yeah, I mean, it really is that, what we already talked about is that balance between, not wanting to do things the way that they were done before, but also not wanting to um, lose, what they would consider um, that parenting role, um, by being too permissive and by kind of being hands off. Um, there's a lot of conflict, I think, among parents right now. of how to find a balance and how to feel like they're not damaging their kids while at the same time being able to guide them and keep them safe and do all these things without going too far, without being that really strong authority that they, you know, rebelled against themselves.
Right,
And
right.
so I think that is like the biggest, that I think that's the biggest thing I'm seeing right now is how do we find that balance, and um, where do we look to,
Right.
you know, to meet the needs of my kids without, going too far in one direction.
I love the title of your book, Words Like Honey, because I think there's also kind of a double meaning there that would be interesting for us to explore in this way. You probably have seen two hilarious social media memes of a grandmother and, with the grandchildren and the daughter, the mom of those children intervening every time grandma says, "All right, it's time to go." And no, what we say is this, be careful on the slide. We don't say be careful. I mean, just all of this monitoring of
Yeah.
everything that's coming out of a certain generation's mouth or interacting with friends' children, and they have a certain way they want their children talked to and all of that kind of stuff. And some of these things, I got to be honest, Amy, feel very nuanced. I do
Yeah.
think there's language that can be damaging, but I also think that we have tried to develop a lexicon of perfect language. I'm
Right.
sure there are moms who feel a little bit stuck, like they're so afraid they're going to say something wrong, searching for
Hmm.
the right word choices. There are babysitters and neighbors and aunts and grandparents who are also trying to scramble and feel like they're being corrected all of the time. If you're a parent who has said, I'm going to really try to abide by language that is gentler, that is affirming of my kids' emotions, that is not trying to instill states of, fight or flight when that doesn't
Hmm.
need to be there, when it's not an emergent situation. How do you advise parents to then, with words like honey, engage the people in their community who may not have this type of language base as their common center, but who are also not necessarily being overly rough or
Hmm.
cruel or whatever with their language? How do we make sure that words like honey extend to both our children and to the people in our community who care about our kids and want to be able to interact, but also are starting to feel kind of stuck in not
Yeah.
knowing what to say?
Well, it's important to know that, you can't shelter your kids from all of that. And
Yeah.
so we are very firm believers in, we are going to raise our kids and talk to our kids the way that, we feel that we should, but we can't put that, especially when we're not talking about outright harm and outright cruelty, we can't put that on other people. Um, I've actually had an instance where I was at the park, and a parent, yelled something at her child who was playing with my son, my son came over and was like, "Did you hear what his mom said?" And I was like, "It's okay, honey. That's his mom. It's okay. Like
Yeah.
he looks fine. He's doing good." And so it's kind of a an instance where we have to really teach our kids that, not everybody is going to be the same and do things the same. But this is how we talk in our family, and or how we try to talk in our family. And we just need to have grace on all people. It's, these are really common phrases, and you're going to hear them, and our kids are going to hear them, and we're going to say them, and our kids are going to say them. And so um, having that awareness is really the goal here. I don't think that I could completely eliminate any of these phrases because they're so ingrained. So many of them are so ingrained, especially the ones, when we're talking about just simple phrases that we are saying to our kids. Um, but having awareness of what we want to remove from our vocabulary, and having information about what we can say instead, what we can replace with, can help us to, really minimize when we say these things. Like, I definitely am more, I've reduced so many of the phrases that I say that I don't want to say to my kids, but I know they come out. I mean, I tell a story in the book about how I was writing about a phrase not to say, and how one of my kids was watching my baby, and I literally yelled that phrase at my kid as I was writing about not saying it. So, and then I tried to be totally transparent, because the last thing I want to do is say, you know, I'm great at this and you are not. And, I know I'm not great at this. And, and that's, why we just have to, trust in the sovereignty of God, because we, um, are not, we're not perfect people. We become aware, we use intention, and we do our very best, but um, we can't we can't put that on other people, and we have to have grace on ourselves.
Right. You mentioned in your research that childhood anxiety and depression are on the rise, which
Mm.
honestly, Amy, is surprising in terms of how, in the last, I'd say, decade of parenting, it seems like we've seen parents to some degree take their foot off the gas a little bit, try to use more gentle phrases, try to be very
Mhm.
validating of their children's emotions. And yet, we've probably also all witnessed a situation in which a kid is an absolute terror at a
Mhm.
restaurant and mom is saying, "Sweetheart, I see that you have a lot of energy. Sweetheart, mommy would love it if you would come sit by mommy." And,
Right.
internally you're thinking, go get that kid. So,
Yeah.
why do you think we're seeing these rising levels of challenging emotion for kids to manage, particularly when they're little? I mean, anxiety and depression, those are big, big feelings. Why do you think we're seeing that rise in the midst of a lot of parents really trying hard to
Yeah.
make sure that they are identifying and talking to their kids about emotions?
Yeah. I think that there's so many reasons. I think obviously screens, I think, is a really big one. Um, the um, I think parents are a lot more stressed, and with everything that's going on in the world and everything that, we've experienced in the past, however many years. I think, parents have less of a sense of peace, and then they are in turn often turning to screens as a way to kind of numb that. And then our kids are missing that connection, while at the same time, oftentimes turning to screens themselves, social media, all of that. I think that is a really big reason for this. While at the same time, I do think there are other things, simple things, that can contribute, such as the words that we use, the way we talk to our kids, the way we connect with our kids, the way we discipline our kids. All of these things, I think, can really contribute to, uh, you know, the anxiety and depression that is on the rise with kids.
Right. Talk to me about how we can determine for our kids the balance that's needed, because as we said, for example, in the community members may be speaking to our kids in a different way. I know one of the concerns that I've heard people talk about before is, okay, let's say I raise my child in an environment in which I'm doing my very best to use words that are kind, that are very, very much indicating that I see them, that I care about where they're at, that I'm trying to avoid these different states. How prepared is that child going to be to go into the quote unquote real world and have that first boss who is just verbally shooting at them? I have a good friend in my life whose parents truly were incredible. They were way ahead of their time in terms of their word choices, their parenting style. I mean, truly, my friend had this incredible upbringing. Part of the challenge on the flip side in becoming an adult was this person felt that they were very unprepared for, honestly, how a lot of the world, how bosses, how employers, how colleagues would speak to them. So how do we make sure that in all the good that we're doing with the language choices, with what the reader is going to find in your book in terms of subbing out certain phrases,
Mhm.
but how do we make sure kids are really prepared for the fact that they're going to enter a world in which they likely are not going to experience the same kind of language systems?
Mhm. Well, one thing is, that's one of the reasons we don't shelter people or shelter our kids from other people in the world. They need, they need to experience how other people talk, and how other people behave. And they need to learn, with us helping them, how to navigate that in life. And also we're constantly teaching our kids. For us specifically, we have conversations after conversation after conversation. We talk about what people are going through. We talk about how some people view things. We talk about how some people behave. We talk about what we need to do in a certain situation. We really, really value just conversations and going over things and role playing and all of that stuff. So we try to give our kids a foundation, um, that where we are helping them, but also making them capable and aware, because that's super important. And then at the same time, we are not perfect people. So they do, I think all of our kids are going to experience some of this stuff from us, no matter how hard we try. Um, it's it's not possible to completely prevent yourself from saying something you don't want to say, from putting your kids in a situation that they might feel like kind of traumatized from at some point in their life, because we're not perfect people. And so um, how we react and respond in those moments and moving forward is what really matters, and is what helps our kids learn how to navigate those things in life. I talk about repair. We are going to say the things we don't want to say. The ones that we weren't sure were harmful, the easy ones. And sometimes we're going to say the ones that we knew were harmful and we knew we shouldn't have said, and we did. And so they're going to learn from that. And we also teach them by taking ownership, by saying sorry, by letting them know, I should not have said that. I'm sorry. And just helping them to see that we aren't perfect people. No one is. We need to learn how to navigate these things in a healthy way. Um, I think that by really just helping our kids and not sheltering our kids, but doing our very best and repairing when we need to, they will build that ability for the future.
I love this idea of role playing. I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
powerful to say you may have an employer who says this, you may have a professor who says that. That's a great way to infuse some information and to help that child understand that, yeah, there are going to be other choices people make with their language towards
Mm-hmm.
us. It's an opportunity to say, well, that could have been different, but you don't have to
Yeah,
stop there. You can also coach through what that could feel like and
exactly.
how to manage that. That's a really beautiful idea. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being with me today. I know that when the listener gets hold of your book, they're going to find those great lists of things that they can sub out for many phrases that we all use as mamas, but better ways to communicate that. Tell the listener where they can go to find out more about you on the socials, where they can find the book, all that stuff.
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm at Simple Little Amy, and my website is simplelittleamy.com. And my book is available on all the places.
All the places, all the
All the
places.
places.
Words like honey. Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking time to be with me today. I'm excited for the listener to get hold of all the great stuff that you do and start making these improvements in their own communication styles at home. I mean, what a beautiful gift to give your kids. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, listener, you know what to do. Show notes every week. Rebecca puts those together so you can go check this all out. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I love to go back to the transcript and kind of look at some things in a way. My brain just also likes to see the written word. So those transcripts are there as well of my conversation today with Amy. Be sure and check out All Mom Does, allmomdoes.com, All Mom Does on the socials, because it's a great community of women in the same seasons of life that you're in, asking a lot of the very same questions. I know you're going to find great community there. Hey, come on over to, let's say, Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. I'm Julie Lyles Carr over there. And I love it when you come say hi and you get into my DMs and tell me about topics, questions, guests that you would love to see on the show. That helps guide us to make sure that we're having the conversations that matter most to you. And I'll see you next time here on the AllMomDoes podcast.